Hi everyone. So today marks the 20th anniversary of a really major event that happened. And 9/11 2001, the World Trade Center was basically destroyed by two terrorist planes crashing into them and completely just being destroyed, falling apart. There was also a plane that hit the Pentagon. So it was a very, very dark day. So what I'd like to do is tell you my story. I think that there's a lot of people who like to try to ignore history or try to change history because they don't care for um, what it says, or they don't really like the narrative history is actually showing. But the truth is, history is history. It's something that happened, it was real, and so let's talk about it. So again, it was 2001. So I was in high school at that point. I was in the lower grades, ninth or 10th grade. I can't exactly 100% remember. It's one of those things where like the grade I was in wasn't important enough to the story or important enough to remember. Just that I was in high school. That's important. So the day started like any normal day, you know. Get up, get ready, walk to school. I only lived a block away, so I'd walk to school. You know, I had thoughts of like friends and tests and just all these different things that you would normally have as a high schooler. Got to school, everything was going okay. We started our first period. Our school had little like TVs in the corner of each room because we did the whole Channel 1 thing. So, all of you 30 somethings who know what I'm talking about, Channel 1. Yeah, we had Channel 1. Those were all there, and the reason why that's important is because, about, I want to say it wasn't that long into it. I feel like it was only like maybe an hour into school. I can't exactly remember the amount of time, but there was this. It was actually a phone ringing because the different teachers that they could be called obviously through the PA, but I believe I was in the fine arts wing and they had a phone, and the teacher had got the call, looked really like upset, turned on the TV, turned off the lights. And what we saw on the TV was the aftermath of the first plane hitting the tower. So I didn't see the first plane hit the tower. Now, as a high schooler, it just didn't seem real. It felt like I was watching a movie or like a video game. It didn't hit. It didn't like sink in. I couldn't comprehend that this was real and actually happening. Because nothing like that has happened in my lifetime, which apparently now it has, obviously. So we're going through our day, and the whole day, it didn't matter. The bell would ring, you'd switch classes, but we would sit in the dark with the TV on, just watching and watching and watching and watching. After school, bell would ring, we all went home. Everyone was watching the news at home as well. So it was just this really large all-day event. I did see the footage of the crash into the second tower and of the tower falling. It was horrible. I can say that I don't have anybody that is particularly attached to me that was in the tower, so I don't have a direct contact to that. But I do know people who did have people in the tower, so it really did affect a lot of people. It affected the whole country. So in high school, one of the things that was a concern was I'm from Warren, Michigan, and near the high school, not super near, not like right next door, but close enough, was a tank plant. And there was a fear that the tank plant was going to be on the list of sites that was going to be hit by a terrorist attack. So all the activities at the school were cut for the whole week. So I was in like marching band. There was no marching band practice even during school hours. We were not going outside because it was dangerous. There was a no-fly order around us, so there was no one who was supposed to be flying any planes of any kind over us. Remember that for later, because that's going to be important later. So there was this really big sense of fear because this was tragic. It never happened before. And again, remember, I'm a teenager, so I'm not comprehending. It's taking a day or two for me to like really, wow, this happened. It's real. Because again, when you're a teenager, you don't understand as well as you when you're an adult. That's why you're not considered an adult until a certain age. Your brain isn't developed enough to understand what was going on. So all of the everything, as I said, was just, it was cut. It was like a ghost town. You would go to school and then you'd come home. It wasn't like people were out and about. People weren't going to like parks or just hanging out at stores. People were, if they got what they needed, they went home. A couple of the more interesting things are more, I'll say positive, if there can be a positive things, is first of all, it was a time where everything was super patriotic. Like after that happened, I don't think I could walk down a block without every house having an American flag. It didn't matter if you were Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, independent, whatever. We all were unified as a nation. We came together for this tragedy to heal, and it was a big move of unity. Another thing that happened was that faith became a big deal. Now, I'm a Christian and I have been for most of my life. So for me, faith and prayer is something that is just part of my life. But to see so many people coming to faith, coming together, praying, being there together to heal after what happened, it was a big thing. So faith, unity, prayer, there was patriotism, all of these things together. Just this almost like taking everybody and literally fitting them together. Everyone fit together. We were a nation. So that was something that really stood out to me about that time. It even went as far, I'm a musician, if you didn't know, went as far as we played more patriotic music for the next couple concerts for the marching band and for concert band, and we even sang some more patriotic tunes for choir even. So it was a time of unity, unfortunately born from this tragedy. So in the days that followed, so obviously it was a week of no one was allowed to go outside or do anything for the school. The following week, we finally started to have rehearsals for marching band again outside during school hours. So after school activities were sort of being brought back. I seem to remember a football game having to be rescheduled because obviously no one wanted to do football right after this tragedy. There was, a lot of hurt and a lot of fear still. So, so we started the marching band practice, and I remember we got out to the field and we saw a plane in the sky, and that freaked all of us out because, again, there was no flight order over where we were because of our position with the tank plant. So again, now when I say it was close, I want to say like my school was close to, it was on what was called 9 Mile, and we were set up in grids. The tank plant was on, it was closer to like 12 Mile. So, we're talking 3 miles up and about 2 or 3 miles over. So it wasn't like here, it was like, whoa, over there somewhere. But still, it was close enough that we would see if someone was flying overhead to get there. We were obviously en route, our air zone for the high school. Turns out, everything was okay. There was an announcement over the PA system that it was just military air. It was a military plane making sure the no-flight order was being listened to. And then after the second week, things kind of went back to normal. It was back to normal scheduled activities, back to normal flight things. Like, there is obviously airports in Michigan. Warren is right by Detroit. The Detroit airport is a big airport. So flights resumed and things resumed again. But people held on to that sense of unity and patriotism for a while. I would say, sorry for pausing, but I don't recall that feeling of unity and that coming together ending before I graduated. So I graduated high school in 2005, and that unity stayed there in the community the whole time. So, I know my story isn't necessarily the most interesting, the most tragic, but again, just giving recounts of where you were and what you were doing on that day to one provide like here's a little bit of the story maybe you didn't know. So like obviously maybe you didn't know that a state like mine was afraid because we had a tank plant, and that having a military place like having a tank plant was a worry at that point because of the Pentagon got hit, the trade centers got hit. The second thing is that now we have a whole generation of people who didn't even know a trade center was there. They've grown up without the New York skyline looking the way it used to. So it almost seems, as I said before, like history gets tweaked and buried to fit whatever narrative the popular ideal of the day is. So I think it's important to, again, share these stories, even though it's not the most interesting story, to remind people that it did happen. There were real people. People were affected across the entire nation, even those who weren't necessarily in New York. The last thing is that I think it's important to share what you went through in history because I strongly believe that if we don't pay attention to history, history repeats itself. And one of the things that I'm really trying to impress upon you in my story is that unity feeling was such a big, important part of healing, of coming together and moving on past 9/11. And it's just not there now. Now everyone is so hypersensitive that if you have a minor disagreement on anything, everyone's ready to fight. There isn't unity anymore, there's chaos. So I don't want, as a human being, as a father, just as a person, I don't want another tragedy to have to come along for us to be unified again as a nation. So, I'm hoping that if enough of us share our stories today, we can at least kind of spark that idea of unity again, in remembering the tragedy that brought us together in September 11th, 2001. All right. Well, thank you for listening to my story. I hope I get to hear some of your stories, and I hope that you take today to remember, reflect, and that you don't forget what has happened. Bye, everyone.